Hey everybody, welcome to In the Red Zone. Sean Brown, Michael Johnson here, and it is time for our picks for the national championship game, TCU versus Georgia. But before we get to that, we got to talk about the semifinal games. It was the two best combined semifinal games of the playoff era so far. Both games were great. I watched all of both games. First off, we'll talk about TCU and Michigan. Here's the bottom line with that. You know, Michigan lost by 5 or 6 points there at the end. A 21-point swing, 2 pick sixes, and a fumble on the one, trying to give it to the fullback. That's 21-point difference right there. Yeah. And they lost by 5 or 6. Bottom line is, I don't care what TCU fans have to say. You know I'm an Ohio State fan. I don't like Michigan. I was rooting for TCU, even though I picked Michigan. But here's the bottom line. Michigan was the better football team. They were able to move the ball at will against TCU. They just were not mentally prepared for this game. J.J. McCarthy, you know, seeing the interviews leading up to the game, seeing his comments that he made, there is a line between confident and cocky. Yeah. And he crossed it. Yeah. And I think he needed humbled, and he got humbled. Well, they were not ready for this game mentally.
To me,
they were not.
He didn't necessarily even go school for school. I mean, he straight up called out the entire Big 12. I mean, said, you know, we're bringing the Big 10 down. And that's what you do. You know, I wasn't offended by it or anything, but it just, man, if you're going to talk that game. And he had a great game. He was 20 of 34 for 343 yards, 2 touchdowns, but 2 interceptions that ended up costing
2 interceptions, them. And that fumble was largely on him at the one. Yeah. That he did not get the ball in the bread basket.
It was either late to hand it off, or it just, I don't know. It just looked like a bad handoff from
what I saw was it was a quick handoff to the fullback. You don't see it very often, but he overextended it. He didn't put it right in the stomach. He extended past the stomach, and it caused. He's not solely to blame. Yeah. The fullback's got some blame, but that's on him as well. I mean, that exchange has to be clean. So really, 3 turnovers, 3 costly turnovers that cost him the game.
Well, and what happens, you know, if Blake Corum's playing in this game? There were a couple other players out for Michigan, but
Edwards also had a cast on his hand, made it a little difficult. You can't say it didn't affect him.
Well, and Edwards goes for 119 yards, no touchdowns, but Emari Demercado for TCU, kid can play, because Kendre Miller, I believe, got injured, right? And he was out for a large part of that game. He's I believe their #1 running back, but it's kind of, they've got a really good tandem in Demercado and Kendre Miller, and Demercado went for 150 yards, 1 touchdown. Kendre Miller did play, but just you know, he got his helmet taken, I think, in the third quarter maybe.
And TCU, I mean, they ran Max Duggan. That's what they do. Yeah. Everybody knew that was going to happen. Michigan's defense had problems with that, and I think they were so kind of focused on trying to stop him. They had several busted coverages. I mean, left TCU receivers wide open.
Yeah, Quentin Johnson went. He had 6 receptions for 163 yards and 1 touchdown. I mean, if you look at the skill positions, just on the skill positions. Ronnie Bell had 6 receptions for 135 yards, 1 touchdown. Roman Wilson had 5 catches for 104 yards, 1 touchdown. Donovan Edwards, like I said, 119 yards. But then your second leading rusher was J.J. McCarthy, 10 carries for 52 yards, 1 touchdown, which is a 5.2 yards per carry. But the stats that just jump out and catch your attention was TCU's having 150 yards for Demercado, and then Quentin Johnson having 163 yards, 1 touchdown. So those are just the stats that really jump out to me. On defense, you didn't let me look at Michigan here first before I say what I was going to say. Rod Moore for Michigan had 12 tackles. He was their leading tackler. And he had the most, out of anybody on the defensive side.
So, I mean, TCU advances, Big 12 advances.
First Big 12 team to make the college football
final. How amazing would that be to say 2023 national champion TCU Horned Frogs?
Yeah.
I mean, because, I know they were your dark horse to win the Big 12, but neither one of us expected them to be in a national championship.
No, I thought they would be decent this year and could surprise. I would have never thought they would have made it to the national championship game.
I mean, I mean, I think it's great. I think it's great for college football to have a team like TCU make it to the championship game.
What it really does is it gives some ammunition to the people who are saying expand this thing. And we know it's going to be expanded in 2024 to 12 teams, but this just gives just a foot down in that argument of we need to add more teams because other teams can make it. You know, last year you had Cincinnati make it into the playoffs. They didn't win, but now you've got TCU who they showed the difference in both schools' sizes. And, you know, TCU is something like 300 square acres, and Michigan is like 3,000. And then they showed the seat capacity of each stadium. TCU, I think, holds something
50,000,
50-something thousand, maybe 47. And then
Michigan's got the biggest stadium,
obviously, you know, 107,000.
Okay, so
that's crazy.
Okay, before we get to picks, let's move on to the second semifinal game. Listen, yes, I'm an Ohio State fan. I started the year really rooting for Tennessee because they're the underdog. I like Josh Heupel. I like Hendon Hooker. But Tennessee fans made it very just miserable. And by the end of the season, I just wanted them to lose. And Georgia fans, same way. I mean, the first thing that I had somebody message me immediately was, how'd you like us kicking your tail? Listen, Ohio State dominated that game for 55 of the 60 minutes. They did. And there was no tail kicking by Georgia. Georgia's kind of lucky to have won the game, to be honest with you.
When I look at 42-41, I mean, nobody got their tail kicked.
No.
I mean, you could say, I mean, that's a lot of offense to be putting up on those defenses, but you've got C.J. Stroud and you've got Stetson Bennett who have, you know, Stetson Bennett has been there before. He knows what it takes to win a national championship. You know, C.J. Stroud has had his share of big games. So, I mean, and you would really think, seeing a stat line of 23 of 34 for C.J. Stroud, 348 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, a QBR of 93.8. Tell me they don't win that game.
Well, okay, so we both picked Georgia to cover. They didn't, whatever. But go back to what I said when we did the picks for the semifinals. You know, I said, and you can go watch it. It's on video, so it's not, you know, Monday morning quarterbacking here. I said if Ohio State was going to have a chance to beat Georgia, 2 things had to happen. 1, C.J. Stroud had to run the ball. He ran the ball.
He did that.
I mean, he came into the game. He didn't have a single rushing touchdown all year long. He does not like to run. And Ohio State fans argued with me on this. The only time he ran the ball, really ran the ball all year long, was against Northwestern. And that's because they had 60-mile-an-hour winds and nobody could throw the ball. But he finally ran when he needed to run.
12 times
and it's really
34 yards.
And that opened up the second point I said. Against Michigan, Ohio State wanted to dink and dunk, 3-yard passes, bubble screens, which didn't work. You got to throw the ball downfield. Well, when C.J. Stroud starts busting off 10, 15-yard runs, now you got to be mindful of that. And that opened up the secondary, and that opened up Ohio State to be able to throw the ball. And Ohio State's offense came out and played like we really expected them to play all year long. They kind of dominated Georgia's defense, really.
You had Emeka Egbuka go his longest was 27 yards. Marvin Harrison Jr., his longest was 31 yards. Julian Fleming, his longest was 25 yards. Xavier Johnson, his longest was 37 yards. So you had 4 go for 25 yards or more. And that's pretty impressive.
And for Ohio State all game long to continue offensively dominating like that, when Cade Stover goes out, Mayan Williams tried to play. I knew he was not going to be able to play because I knew there's no way he was going to be healed. And then Travion Henderson doesn't even make the trip. You got a true freshman, Dallin Hayden, and then you had the converted linebacker at running back. Like I said, Cade Stover goes out. And then really for me, honestly, at the end of the third quarter when Marvin Harrison went out with a hit and got pulled up for concussion protocol, that was the moment where I was like, oh, man, like that's kind of it because now what? And they only scored 3 points in the fourth quarter. and Georgia comes back and scores 18. And a big part of that is without Marvin Harrison Jr. on the field, that helped Georgia's defense a lot.
Yeah.
And so, and two plays here, two plays really, in my opinion, coaching errors that lost the game for Ohio State. Number one, remember they ran the fake punt, but just before the fake punt, Kirby Smart called timeout, so it didn't count. It was a 4th and 1.
Yes.
Ohio State runs it. Would have been a first down.
Yep.
He calls a timeout. Okay, that's fine. That's smart on Kirby Smart's part. The problem I have is that the Ohio State defense, at that point, Georgia's offense had kind of hit in a stride. Mm-hmm. It was pretty obvious to me we weren't going to stop them. So, to me, I know you're in your own side of the field, but if you want to win a national championship, you got to get that 1 yard.
Yeah.
I mean, so even though the fake punt didn't count, you still line up and you go for it on 4th down.
Right.
Because you punt, and what happens? A couple plays later, they score, and they're back in it again.
Yeah.
And then, to me, another big coaching error was at the end of the game, when Ohio State gets the ball with 55 seconds to go, as soon as Stroud made that pass over the midfield, the next play with like 45 seconds to go is a handoff for 4 yards, and they don't call a timeout. At that moment right there, I knew Ryan Day was playing for the field goal. And I'm sorry, if it's a 35-yard field goal, you play for the field goal to win. At 50 yards, you can't.
Right.
You can't count on a 50-yard field goal.
Yeah.
I know we have a great field goal kicker who makes kicks, but you can't do that. And I that whole time I'm like, I posted it to some of my friends on Facebook, on my personal Facebook account. I was like, stay aggressive. Don't play for the freaking field goal. We're going to miss it and lose. Yeah. And we did.
Yeah.
You just can't count on that. That's too far to kick for a game-winning field goal.
Yeah. That
in that situation.
To lose on a failed, play or whatever.
And all he did was he overkicked it.
Yeah.
He was trying too hard, and he shanked it really bad.
Yeah.
So
I highlighted C.J. Stroud. I just real quick.
Yeah.
I don't want to act like I'm playing favorites or anything, but Stetson Bennett went 23 of 34, 398 yards through the air, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, a QBR of 74.9, which that interception probably has something to do with why the QBR.
He made plays when he needed to make plays.
Yeah.
He just did.
He's a gamer. He kind of, a few years ago when they won the national championship, and everybody's just like, Stetson Bennett, what? He doesn't belong there. He doesn't even look like a football player.
Yeah.
We heard everything when it came to him, but he has shown time and time again that he is closer to a Baker Mayfield than a A.J. McCarron. I don't know. It just he makes big play after big play, and he's just I don't know.
He's poised.
He's very poised.
And he's not cocky. He is confident.
Yeah,
but he's not.
And it's fun to see him after they know they're winning the game and just running. I just love when a quarterback gets in there with his guys, celebrates with his team, because a lot of these guys that know they're going to the league and know this is just a 4-year stay. I've even heard it about OU that for several years, getting those number 1 quarterbacks, those 5-star quarterbacks, it was a bit of diva-ish or prima donna in the quarterback room. Mm-hmm. And that's understandable. These are guys that, their entire lives they were told how good they were.
Yeah.
And it's them,
Mm-hmm.
they're the rock stars of the football team.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see a quarterback that goes and celebrates with his team. And
and then last point of this, and then we'll start talking about the game. I'm sick and tired of Georgia fans right now, but they're
gonna be all
I don't
in
care,
our comments right
but
now.
It's like all week I heard about C.J. Stroud, Jalen Carter's going to eat C.J. Stroud alive and everything. Jalen Carter had his hands on his hip. He was gassed in the first quarter.
Yeah.
He is not in shape, and he's not going to be in shape by next week.
Well, and I'm sure
he had 1 tackle.
Yeah.
1 tackle.
I'm sure Ryan Day probably, schemed around him a little bit.
Maybe.
But I will say,
He's a weakness right now if he's not in shape.
I will say there is a Georgia fan on Twitter who's about one of my favorite people to follow on Twitter. That's Dre Mack. So if you're a Dogs fan and you know of Dre Mack, dude's just salt of the earth, great person.
And I gotta say, it's not all Georgia fans,
right?
But there's a lot of them. Yeah. There's a lot of them that have just gotten under my skin.
Out there, there is the most annoying fan base, and that's not saying, and I'm not saying that's Georgia. It's very obviously Texas A&M, but
I think it's Texas Tech.
I'm just messing with you guys.
Anyway.
But no, there is the most annoying fan base out there. There's the most anything out there. But let's get to this pick.
Okay.
So, I know it's going to be. I think it's going to be a great game. I can't wait to see the battle between Stetson Bennett and Max Duggan.
TCU, Georgia, in LA,
where
the Super Bowl was last year, SoFi Stadium. Georgia, a 13-point favorite, got up to 14 at one point. It's back down to 13. It's kind of just hovering in there.
Yeah.
So here's the thing: a lot of people are going to watch the Ohio State-Georgia game, and they're going to see how C.J. Stroud ran successfully. And the obvious is going to be, oh my gosh, I mean, if C.J. Stroud could run like that, Max Duggan's going to have a field day. He's going to rush for 200 yards.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, because, if I'm Georgia's defensive coordinator and I'm trying to scheme and I'm preparing for Ohio State, C.J. Stroud never runs. You don't have any tape of him running the ball. Had no rushing touchdowns. You're not preparing for that, right? You're not preparing for that.
Yeah.
It's different here. You know what you get with TCU.
Well, on the flip side, TCU now has tons of film on Georgia and what they were lacking in.
And their biggest weakness, they had two big weaknesses on defense. One, Jalen Carter being out of shape, because when you got to rotate him out, I mean, I'm sorry, but if he's that much out of shape, he's a liability on defense.
Yeah.
Him in is when Max Duggan needs to run the ball, because he's not going to get to Max Duggan.
Yeah.
He's too out of shape. Secondly, Georgia's secondary was exposed. They had miscues, coverage busts. They tried two safeties, and all you have to do, tailback seam down the middle.
Yeah.
Both safeties split. There's nobody in the middle of the field. Or you get two guys on the outside running deep, and you get some deep posts, and there's no safeties there. Because now you're relying mostly on linebackers to cover slot receivers. Not going to work. So yes, if Max Duggan can make the throws and he can gash them a couple times, the game stays extremely close.
Yeah.
I still think that TCU's defense is too weak to completely shut down Georgia's offense.
Now,
and so I don't think there's any way, in my opinion, that TCU wins this game. I hope I'm wrong, because I'm rooting for them. I don't care if I get the pick wrong.
Yeah.
But I don't think that they can win this game. What I do think is they can keep it to a 4-point game.
Yeah.
I'm taking TCU in the points, but I do think Georgia wins the game.
So I'm going to give just a little bit of info on how these teams fare out when they, as far as the spread is concerned. Georgia, in just about every category, is about a 50% as far as covering. They were favored in, I think, every game that they played in this year. They covered in half of those. So as far as a neutral site goes, Georgia is 2-2. I'm looking for TCU. TCU is one of the only teams that has covered in double-digit times. Yeah. I think it's. I think there's
and
only
part of
5
that
teams.
too. First half of the year, they were underdogs in most of their games. So when you win, you automatically cover.
Yeah.
So
I don't think TCU played a neutral site. Oh, here we go, 1-1. So they're 50% too, as far as neutral sites. But they only played 2 neutral site games, and one of those being this bowl game. So let's see. As the favorite, I think. So 7-7 was what Georgia was as the favorite, because they were favored in every game. Let's see. I don't have. The only thing I can't find right now, and I'm not gonna. Here's non-conference games. TCU is 4-0 in their non-conference. as far as covering the spread. Georgia, they are going to be down the list a little bit. They're 1-4 in non-conference in covering the spread.
Georgia's 1-4. Okay.
1-4. So
pretty telling.
It is very telling. Normally, when you see these during the year, you know, it doesn't really help a whole lot. I like to give that information just in case it helps somebody. Just that extra bit of info, you know. It's in college football, it's the 13th data point, you know, that conference championship game. But as far as just all games are concerned, TCU is 10-3-1, so they're good for 76.9% covering. And like I said, there's only 6 teams that were in the double digits. Yeah. Tulane was one; they were 12-2. Oregon State was 11-2. Troy was 11-3. TCU 10-3-1. Southern Mississippi 10-3, and Tennessee 10-3. So, and then Georgia, like I said, they're pretty far down the list at 7-7. So I'm taking TCU and the points. I would not be surprised, and this is not me trying to hedge my bet or anything. I would not be surprised if Georgia just dominated and blew them out.
Yeah.
I would be surprised if TCU blew out Georgia.
Oh, that'd be a shocker for everybody.
Yeah, so that's kind of my I'm taking TCU. I'm confidently in, you know, I'm putting a lot of confidence on TCU keeping it a close game, definitely within 13 points.
I think TCU scores 35 to 40 points.
Yeah, I think a lot of this in the game opened up at what, 13?
It opened at 13, went 13.5, went to 14, came back down 13.5, now down to 13.
So this is part of the problem with football poll index or power index.
Yeah.
Is that and I heard I was listening to some sports radio over the weekend, and one of the handicappers was on. I don't think it was Fat Jack, but it was one of the handicappers that buys space, you know, on a Sunday. So he said that with FPI or Power Index, they take the previous year into account. So in their calculations, the previous year is factored in there.
Which
will tell me how
with the transfer portal and all that, how can you do that?
Right.
You know,
the transfer portal, and they've got to get that out of there. With transfer portal, NIL, I mean, they've got to get that out of their calculations because it's moot at this point. Because tell me how Tulane goes from 2-12 to 12-2 the very next year.
Congratulations on beating USC, by the way.
Right. Yeah. That was
I think
great.
We
both took USC, but
hey, it's fine.
Never a bad day when Lincoln Riley goes down.
There you
go. But Grinch is not your answer. I'll say that. I don't want to get too much into that game because we'll go on a tangent. But going into the Big Ten, Grinch is just not the answer.
But when's Riley fire him? I mean,
it's his buddy, so he can't.
If he wants to win a national championship, he's got to. Wants to make the playoffs, he's got to.
We begged for there to be changes, and he kept his buddies on staff. And congratulations to becoming the Texas Tech of the Pac-12.
But back to what you were talking about. Last year, Michigan State did it. They hit the transfer portal. They brought in a bunch of guys. Mel Tucker had a heck of a year and then got a massive contract. Yeah. And then they're back to.
Well, Baylor did it too with Dave Aranda. Yeah. Or with
so some team next year who underperformed this year is going to jump out next year, win 10 or 11 games and surprise everybody.
Matt Rule did it at Baylor.
Yeah.
And then Dave Aranda, I believe, came out and had a great year after his first
Wisconsin,
year.
Nebraska, I'm just saying, next year, watch out.
Dude, Wisconsin got Tanner Mordecai and Nick Evers.
Let me go on another tangent real quick before we wrap it up.
It's the last show. You guys can hang around for a minute.
Listen, I think we've talked about this before. Transfer portal, they need a rule. You can only transfer one time your collegiate career.
Yeah.
One time. Because Tanner Mordecai goes from OU, and here's the issue I have. It's not like Tanner Mordecai went to SMU and then didn't get a play and now wants to transfer to Wisconsin.
Right.
He was dominant. Mm-hmm. You've got all these players who were throwing for 4,000 yards and now they're transferring. That's the problem I have. It's not like they're transferring to get playing game. I don't I don't know.
I'd
I'd have to go
interested to know
look. There have
that,
been so many coaching changes. But I have a problem with it. Like JT Daniels, he's on his 15 or 14. There's no way that should be allowed.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're a graduate transfer. That should not happen.
Yeah.
I mean, so I really think
Keaton Slovis is going to what, his third?
Then that's ridiculous.
Team?
You should have one transfer. You don't sit out, but one transfer. And that's the only one you get and then you limit it because to me with the NIL and with the transfer portal, I think they should do away with the red shirt.
You think so?
I think so. I think
they tried to revamp the red shirt deal by saying, okay,
transfer portal,
you can have 4 games,
right?
And then, but anybody that's good enough to play their freshman year, they're most likely. I mean, some of them play 4 games.
But look what Derek King did at Houston.
Yeah,
he played 4 games. They stunk. So he quits and transfers to Miami.
Yeah.
Like it's not like he was on the bench not getting to play.
Right.
And so I think you do away with the red shirts. You tell all these players, you got 4 years in college. Because most of them are starting as freshmen now. So you get 4 years, you can transfer one time, and that's it. So make it count.
Well, it used to be you have 5 years to play 4.
That's with the red shirt.
You have 5 years to play 4, full years. Yeah. And I don't know. I like the
or go back to if you want to keep the red shirt, get rid of the 4-game rule. If you're redshirting, you're redshirting. You're not playing.
I don't know. I always like the fact that the freshmen could come in, get some real game development because the games they're playing in are blowouts. It's garbage time. It's not like they're out there adding unless some of them would play because the part of the reason why it got so big and why so much attention was on the redshirt rule was because so many players started opting out. So it's like, well, we got to use our roster. Yes. You're telling me if I play this freshman one time in a bowl game that he's going to be that's a year?
Right.
That was one game.
But I'm looking at finding a way to stop the Derek King situation.
Yeah.
There's no way a senior should be able to use a red shirt, play 4 games, and then quit.
I mean,
he's the starter. Come on.
Okay, there's no reason why a coach should just leave.
So here's my argument to that, because I know somebody else brought that up, but here's my argument to that. What coach out there is going to a school, it's rare, for 1 year.
You know what I'm going to say.
And then transfer. And
well,
then
not 1 year, but Lincoln Riley. I mean,
okay, he wasn't at OU for 1 year.
I know.
What I'm saying is these coaches are usually spending at least 3 years.
Yeah.
It's not like what's happening with players where it's 1 year go. Like, it's not.
They're limited time. A coach could stay at a school for 20 years. But players, it's like, man, I got to take my – most of it is these players, every single player thinks they're going to play in the NFL.
Yeah.
I'll say probably 85, 90% of the players in college football think that they're going to go play in the NFL. Yeah. Now, some really do take it as but these are – your doctor, they're going to go get their doctorate at that school or they know that they're going to be, in the medical field, something. But most players think that they're going to go play in the NFL. So every single decision they make is just another stepping stone to that.
Again, I got no problem with the person who is at Alabama and doesn't get to play and wants to transfer and play.
Yeah.
I have a problem with the Tanner Mordecai. The yards he put up at SMU.
Well, maybe he's thinking Wisconsin just got this coach, and I'm going to go play for him. He's going to develop me into. But
and the other thing too, I don't know how you feel because I know it's your team and everything, but we have crossed a line, in my opinion, this year with what just happened a week ago, where we have an Oklahoma State player transferring to Oklahoma. This is rivalries. Yeah. Now, I mean, when we start getting a Michigan player transferring to Ohio State or Ohio State transferring to Michigan, this to me is why I don't watch the NFL anymore. Back when I watched the NFL growing up as a kid, 80s, 90s with the Browns, Bernie Kosar was a quarterback, Ozzie Newsome was the tight end. They played on that team. They would never think in their lives to go play in Pittsburgh.
Right.
They didn't. And that's what made it a rivalry. They hated Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh hated Cleveland.
Well,
but now you got guys, 1 year he's a center in Cleveland, next year he's a center in Pittsburgh. Yeah. And he doesn't give a crap. And now we've got that with college football, and it's ruining it. It's ruining it.
They almost, and I understand it.
So sick
I do get it because there's been players that have transferred to Texas that were just like, Why would you go to Texas? Like, you're supposed to hate them.
Right.
But these players don't hate, like, they don't, a lot of players don't watch college football. They don't grow up, you know, hating this team or hating this team. Like, the young kids that I see today, they don't necessarily get into, you know, the stuff that
I'm just saying that it's absolutely, it's killing the culture of college football.
Yeah.
The fact that the players don't have that disdain and hate for a rival.
I will take a healthy Trace Ford any day of the week on the defensive line. Kid can play.
I know.
But
if the roles were reversed and you had a 5-star All-American first-round pick and he transferred to Oklahoma State, you'd hate it.
Well, here's another thing too. Oklahoma State fans look at OU as more of a rivalry than OU looks at OSU.
Sure.
And I'm not, you know, I'm not trolling saying the little brother stuff, but it is true. The fans for Oklahoma, they look at Texas as our main rival.
Yeah.
Sure. Oklahoma State, they're more of a rival than Tulsa is. Oklahoma plays Tulsa every once in a while. You know, there's an agreement between those two schools.
But they would be the second rival after Texas.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
I mean,
that is true, but it's not near as big as the Texas rivalry.
Sure. Okay, I get that.
I mean, I would actually pull for Oklahoma State in a bowl game. I would not pull for Longhorns in a bowl game.
That situation with them is like Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State. There is no way I'm rooting for Michigan.
Yeah.
No way. I told my son, you go to Michigan and get out.
Yeah.
No sport. I'm cutting you off. Seriously. But Penn State's different. They're our second biggest rival.
Yeah.
It's during that week, you know, you trash talk and you want to beat them and you don't like them and everything. But at the end of the day, if Penn State's in the playoffs and Ohio State's not, I'm rooting for Penn State.
Yeah.
So it's similar.
Yeah.
But it's still a rival. I still don't want Ohio State guys going and playing at Penn State and vice versa.
I know.
You know,
but it's happening. I mean,
it devalues the game. It devalues the rivalry.
I think it's not that it necessarily devalues it to us.
For fans, yes.
Yeah. Because a lot of this younger generation doesn't look at it the same way that we do. So like the things that are valuable to us aren't valuable to them.
Yeah.
You know.
And unfortunately,
they're thinking, go get my money. Like,
well, and that's the other thing. Unfortunately, for college football, it's all about money, and all the presidents and all the schools and the athletic departments care more about the TV networks and what they want, as opposed to what the fans want.
Right.
And that's a change that's happened several years ago with college football, and that's also part of the downfall of college football. And, I mean, it's
now the upside to that is you get to watch any game you possibly want to watch.
That's nice.
Unless it's on streaming on ESPN Plus and you don't have it, then you gotta.
I'm not paying for that.
You gotta hit up your brother-in-law to get his YouTube TV account.
Yeah. Well, you know.
And then now they're putting screen limits on.
Oh yeah. So yeah, there's 4 of us on my account watching, and there's 3 limit, and so it rotated like screen limit and
cut me off watching the
reset like.
The game the other night.
That was crazy. So I've got to rethink the YouTube TV with the limit, because they allow 6 people to be on the family sharing, but if only 3 can watch at a time,
right?
Might have to rethink the whole.
Yeah, I remember
YouTube
when
TV.
Netflix did that, and you're like, all right.
Well, it's just
you have to be an adult and pay for my own.
I get it. Like everybody's trying to squeeze an extra $1.
Yeah.
You know, but I think you limit your family sharing to 3 if that's what you're going to do.
Right.
I mean, so anyway, but anything else you want to add?
I'm good.
I'll be honest with you. Outside of the semifinals, I didn't watch hardly any of the bowl games. Really didn't.
It's tough to catch them all. I mean, you know, anytime that we have around the holidays, it's like, well, we got this to do. We got this to do. We got this to wrap. We got this to, you know, put away. We've got all these Christmas decorations now that we got to take down. Like my day off today, we're shooting on Monday. It was not a day off. Like,
that's how it was for me. Yeah.
So my normal.
I took down Christmas lights and had to watch both kids, and
I didn't work today, and you can tell on my app, my fitness app on my phone, you can tell the days I don't work. So like last last Monday I didn't work. Then Tuesday I did. Then
Yeah.
Thursday I think maybe I just didn't have my phone in my pocket.
Yeah.
But then today I'm almost at my goal.
Yeah.
Like there was no off
Well,
day
I mean,
today.
last week we left the morning after Christmas. We drove 16 hours to Ohio.
Yeah.
Dropped off the kids, spent one day, which was Tuesday, and then my wife and I got in the car early Wednesday morning, drove the 7 hours to Washington, D.C. We literally got out of the car, got on the metro, went into D.C., went through the Office experience,
Yeah.
which was pretty
I'm
cool.
so
I'm not
jealous.
an Office fan. She is, but
I'm
that was
so
cool.
jealous.
That was cool. But we metroed right back to the hotel, waited an hour, went and had dinner with her family. Back to the hotel, got up first thing in the morning and drove back to my parents another 7 hours.
Jeez.
And then that was on Thursday. And then Friday morning we left 8 a.m. or so, 16 hours back to Oklahoma. So from Monday after Christmas to Friday, I drove 49 hours, 2,800 miles
Golly.
in that 5-day span. I felt like a trucker.
Man,
So,
that is crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy.
So you heard it here right now. Mike thinks TCU is going to blow out Georgia.
No. No.
I just want more Georgia fans in our comments.
I know. I want to say that just, but no.
No, I think it's going to be a good game. And Georgia fans don't, like I said, I could see a blowout with Georgia. But don't be surprised if TCU makes it a game and your heart's racing during.
Listen, go look. Even though I didn't watch most bowl games,
Yeah.
go look at the results. 76 or 77% of the winners were the underdogs.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man.
And
In our last show, we're sitting here going, "Oh, there's not very
No.
many big
Right.
games. Like nothing's
Yeah.
really happening." And
TCU
then
was the
we
underdog
get-
and beat Michigan. Ohio State, if they'd have won, they were the underdog.
Yeah.
So, listen, this is just the year of the underdog. Now, I don't know. And nobody in the playoff era has repeated back-to-back national champions. And that's saying something considering how good some of these Alabama teams were.
Man.
So nobody's won back-to-back. So, it's not like this is a foregone conclusion for Georgia. TCU has every possibility, especially, if the Georgia players are as cocky as some of their fans right now, then
They're feeling
TCU
great.
might blow them out.
Yeah.
Seriously, because they
Man.
better take care of business and they better focus on TCU because all these Georgia fans think it's not going to be a game. That's the same thing they said about Ohio State, and it was, and they nearly lost.
I'm listening to you, but I just saw the score of the Penn State-Utah game.
Okay.
Cam Rising is currently in the fourth quarter, 2 minutes left, 2.5 minutes left. Cam Rising has gone 8 for 21, 95 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. How does that happen?
Penn State's defense clearly.
Well, and I'm not
Manny
seeing
Diaz.
I'm not seeing that they're the tight end, that had a
Yeah.
crazy big game against USC.
Yeah.
Kincaid.
But
Yeah.
didn't he opt out
Oh, did he?
because for the NFL? I thought he
okay.
opted out of this
Maybe
game.
he did. Maybe he did because I'm not seeing him on the stat sheet.
Okay.
Man.
I could be wrong about that. We're shooting this instead of watching the game, so I don't know. But does it show him having a reception at all in this box score?
Nope.
Yeah, I think he opted out.
He
I'm pretty
probably
sure he
did.
did.
He probably
So,
did.
and that happened, I'm pretty sure, after we picked the game.
How do you opt out of the Rose Bowl? The granddaddy of them all.
Hey, one other point real quick, because some Georgia fans said I was crazy.
He's not. He
Well-
takes his medicine.
No, I made a comment in our picks, and I said that there are some players who are in the transfer portal who are going to be playing in the semifinal games.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, that's not allowed. It's not allowed. Yes, it is. Ohio State had a player, and
It's up to the university.
Alabama had 2 players.
And once you're in
Yeah.
the transfer portal, that university can pull your scholarship immediately.
Right.
As soon as your name hits it, they can
So
pull your
I know
your
Nick Saban
scholarship.
said even the guys who are in the transfer portal, he welcomed them to come play against Kansas State, and they did.
Yeah.
And I know there was one player for Ohio State. His name has slipped my mind. He's not a starter. He's in the transfer portal. He's leaving, but he was there suited
Well,
up. and
Josh
ready to play.
Ellison is a defensive lineman for OU. He might take his name out and come back, but he had a tackle.
So I'm not
against Florida
crazy.
State.
You guys are wrong. You can be in the transfer portal and still play.
Yeah, it's up to
you can do that.
It's up to the university.
If the school wants to let
and most universities will allow a player to still use the facilities. So if you opt out or you decide to transfer, put your name in the portal. If the university allows it or the program allows it, you can still use the facilities and work out. You just can't. You just aren't with the team if they say you can't be with the team.
Yeah. And if you're in the transfer portal, like you said, you can always withdraw your name and stay.
Right.
So it would kind of be dumb of a school to say, get out, you're not using our facility, because now he's definitely leaving.
Right.
There's no chance for him to come back.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it's there's tons of rules, but yeah, you can. I've seen several players in the portal that played for their team that they just decided to keep playing.
That's it, guys. The 2022 season ending in 2023. It's our last show, and week from tonight, national championship. We'll see what happens. And
I'm hoping
what's
it's
this thing? How do you do this?
Good.
How do you do that? Is that how I do it? Like that?
I'm not gonna do that. I'll root for them.
Do two of them? I don't know how you do it.
I will root for a good game. I'll say.
Okay.
I won't on a prediction show say I'm rooting for any certain team, but I will say I really do hope it's a good game. We're due for a really good national championship game.
Did you see the shot during the game of their bulldog Uga? He was in his. They had a carrier, and it's like in the middle of the game. It's a great game, and he's just laying there sleeping.
Yeah.
So let's hope Georgia falls asleep next Monday. So
hey, you said it.
I don't care. They can rip all they want. It's the last show. So, all right, guys, that's it.
We love all you guys.
Thanks for tuning in all year long. Thanks for being fans for the last 6 years, and we'll see you when we see you. Take care.